Hi, my name is Steve McMullen. My oral video presentation is about autism spectrum disorder. I chose this topic because I am autistic and have personal insight on the subject, and I've continued experience through raising my three boys who are also on varying degrees of the autism spectrum. I want to present this information to help others understand more about ASD, especially ASDs and those people who are involved in the lives and care of people with this diagnosis. I'll be covering the definition of ASD, origins of the disorder, how ASD thinking differs from normative thinking, and the effects of that difference on social development, social interaction, and social engagement. Tools that ASDs can use to navigate normative society, and how society's perception of ASDs as citizens can change, and ASDs can leverage their gifts to contribute to society. As much help as learned professionals believe that they can be, there's a limit to the understanding that can be achieved through outside observation by imagining what it must be like to be autistic. I believe that autistic advocates who have been able to navigate themselves through their own different perspective into the social understanding of the general public have a greater ability to aid their other like-minded peers. A great example of this being Temple Grandin. The definition of autism spectrum disorder, according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, the latest edition, the DSM-5, starts off with there being persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts. I put this as not knowing how to human good. They specifically have deficits in social emotional reciprocity and abnormal social approach. This is all going to arise from a difference in the prioritization of interests. The interests of a normative and an ASD will tend to conflict, as ASD interests will be obscure, limited, or very specific. They have deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction. Again, this is a lack of interest in social participation and doesn't give them the experience or practice in how to behave in a socially accepted manner. And they have deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. These skills, these relationship skills, are picked up through participation. While an ASD might understand that a rule is in place and has an effect on normative behavior, they may not understand exactly why the rule exists. Consider a group of children or people that are playing, and as we arrive, we can pick up on existing rules like Sarah's in charge of the play kitchen, or Dave doesn't like the TV too loud, and the comfy chair in the corner belongs only to Kate. The ASD might recognize that most of the people are avoiding Kate's chair, but not understand exactly why. And if they were to attempt to socialize, they might nudge one of the playmates in an effort to participate in the rule, say, "I would never sit in that nasty chair." Of course, the playmate would look at them strangely for many different reasons, and neither of them would understand where the situation had derailed. A large aspect of the ASD definition is restricted and repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. This is not having interests typically accepted by humans, normal humans. They have stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects, or speech. These are atypical sensor-pleasing activities. If a normative were to talk about how they love to go for a ride in the car with the window down and feel the breeze blowing in their hair or laying out in the sun, more people would be able to relate and thereby easily accept those behaviors. But an ASD that stems through behavior that isn't commonly found in society would be seen as strange. Some examples would be rubbing materials on their face and skin, making repetitive noises that stimulate their oral senses, or patterns that are pleasing to the eye. Very commonly, ASD children arrange toys or cars in lines, and those patterns are pleasing in the same way that art would be pleasing to normatives. They insist on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior. This is just a priority and atypical sameness and atypical sameness. Normatives have rituals as well. They just might not be as dedicated or choose to let their behaviors be so easily witnessed by others. If I have a tic or something that I know would be thought of as strange by others, I'd probably try to keep that private and not expose it to public view. An ASD, however, isn't concerned with social image or social participation, so they'll just do it as they see fit whether they're seen doing it or not. They also have highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. This behavior in children is nicknamed being little professors. They pick up subjects that they like and learn everything that they can about it, to a degree that most normatives are going to find excessive. This is, again, not human and good. I've used that phrase a lot. Normatives expect everyone to have diverse interests, especially young children. If an older person has hyper-focused interests, it's less weird. Someone who has dedicated themselves to dance, sports, or painting, for example, would not be seen as unusual. An example of something that is kind of crossed over, in my opinion, would be child music prodigies. 4 to 5-year-old playing Mozart is still impressive nowadays, but not something that is completely unheard of, how it used to be, where it was just exceedingly rare cases like those of savants. And then we have hyper or hypo-reactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects in the environment. This goes back to stimming, again, not human and good. Without the normal focus on other humans, ASD's choices of where to place their attention is unacceptable. Choosing to put an abnormal amount of time into stimming or other things that you wouldn't think you could ignore. The hypo-reactivity would be like walking around and bumping into things. I'm still not going to get to where I need to go to, so it's not necessarily something that requires me to change my behavior. A lack of spatial awareness of their own body is common among ASDs. Another large aspect of the definition are symptoms must be present in the early developmental period. This is just saying we don't pay much attention until behavior screams that something is different, which would be autism. Babies are just little lumps of flesh until about 2 years old, where you'll start to see the deviations from normal child development. These symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of current functioning. Again, they don't human good even as they get older. There's no change. They're continuing to be autistic, and we're not seeing them adapt better to where they're going to be able to function in society. And these disturbances are not better explained by intellectual disability. So here's a catch-all at the end. If you can't explain it with anything else, such as an actual physical defect in the brain, let's say, then it's probably autism. So then we can move on to the origins. The origins of where people think that ASD develops from. They speculate that ASD comes from things such as vaccines, faulty genes, lack of maternal contact, gastrointestinal gut bacterium. All these things fluctuate in their popularity. Vaccines have a large following that rose from a false report that has since been proven to come from a manipulated study and a false study, but it's perpetuated and retold so many times that it hangs on, even though it's been proven to be false. The increased incidence of autism lately in the last few years, almost fivefold, has been explained as an increased awareness. More people know about autism, what it looks like, so more cases are being reported. I actually believe that it's an increase through increased mating of couples with ASD characteristics, which will have offspring with ASD characteristics. I believe that the increase is actually an evolutionary adaptation and a genetic progression of our species. The only reason that the ASDs appear to be an anomaly is because the current majority is normative. ASDs are the emergence of round pegs in an exceedingly square majority. ASD babies develop their ability to reason and think much quicker than normative babies. Our current expectation of child development falls incredibly behind the ASD child's development. Because of this, we haven't developed methods to teach babies that are that young how to communicate. This leaves the ASD children in a uniquely frustrated position, much like being dropped into an alien civilization that is impossible to communicate with. During the several months of living alone in this world, the babies are forced to develop their own strategies for survival. One of the first things that they would have realized is that the large humans are a useless dead end and not worth further investigation. This becomes a very hard thing to unlearn, if not impossible. This is what normatives and professionals will recognize as emotional detachment. Emotional detachment is a coping survival skill that can be developed as a response to traumatic events such as severe abuse or neglect, which the babies are experiencing as they cannot connect to other humans. And because normatives can't frame their mind into this way of thinking, they can't come up with reasons why an individual would not want to connect with other humans. All these individual survival strategies are what make the ASD individual appear to be strange because they do not enter society and begin to adopt the traditions of normatives. My three children started down the common road of how ASDs develop in today's society. Two were nonverbal until 4 to 5 years old, and they had all developed many of the repetitive stimming behaviors seen in many ASDs. With intervention and recognizing exactly where they were on their ASD path, I was able to walk them to an understanding of some early social concepts such as human interaction and the communicating of needs. From there, much of the normative development was magnitudes easier to adapt to ASD thinking and find methods that would better fit in a normative society. I believe that it is possible to aid every single ASD baby onto a path that has them functioning and thriving in today's society. While these changes will help ASDs better participate within our society, it does not strip them of their ASD traits that are inherently superior to normatives. They retain their incredibly keen attention to detail through focus that most normatives would often associate only with people who have trained a great deal. They would also offer a perspective completely shifted outside the status quo, the stale perspective that built everything in our current society. I believe that these citizens sufficiently aided in developing their own traits in a way that makes them applicable in our society would become the intellectual leaders of our future in any field that they choose, and they would cause massive paradigm shifts everywhere that they went. And to explain the whiteboard that I didn't use behind me here, this is one of my Autistic unusual likes. Whiteboards are awesome. I appreciate you watching, and thank you.